All right, let's get to a locker room that might be fractured, the ACC conference, or at least fissures a little bit.
Yeah, here's Ross Dellinger, and he's been talking about this a lot. I mean, he was on with us yesterday, and it was kind of some of the wind had been taken out of the sails because by the time he joined us, right, they were already singing Kumbaya as they left the ACC meetings, it seemed like. But here he is today, and let's rattle that cage a little bit more. We're not unified, ACC source says. We're unified until someone offers a school more to go somewhere else. Everyone is going to grab it. This from Pat Forty via Ross Dellinger. So that's very interesting that somebody made that comment, and I don't think that comes as a surprise. I think that, and there's a response from David Hale of ESPN I want to follow up with here in a second, but as we said at the very top, it seems like, the dust has settled for right now, but in terms of the longer future, that remains a question mark. It's just a matter of like how long in the future are we talking about? Are we talking about this thing is basically unbreakable, the grant of rights or whatever other hurdle might be in the way for another 8 years until they feel like there's a weakness to expose? Is it another couple of years, or is it all 13 years that remain on that contract? But I think, certainly the immediacy that was sort of being felt yesterday, where it was kind of like, oh my gosh, the boulder's rolling down the mountainside and it's coming for the small, I thought that was there's a little too much mustard on that, because it felt like almost like something's about to break, right? And maybe I was just reading too much into it, but nothing's still about to break, although there are cracks, and there's cracks that could further form and could turn into, bigger cracks that create even further division. And David Hale followed up on Ross's tweet, and I guess he's kind of gotten back into a little back and forth with folks on, I guess, a few different things. But he talks about the fact that schools have been having side conversations about the future for 2 years now. All but maybe 1 to 2 have reviewed the grant of rights. Everyone knows the issues and no one is left. And he said that multiple ADs shot down the idea of a joint statement when the ACC asked them if they wanted to release one. And he said, no one said problems are solved, but no one's going to offer more money unless a school is clear of the grant of rights. As Alfred said yesterday, we've crossed a bridge. There are still more bridges. So the bridge they crossed was realizing like the best thing for them to do is try to make something work the way things are right now. But I don't think anybody thought that meant that, all right, nothing's happening until 2036 when the ACC grant of rights comes up. Far from that. And so anybody under that illusion that, there's absolutely nothing to be learned or changed in the future, that's not true. But there are bigger hurdles than also portrayed as well. Like this is going to be some simple thing you could do. No, it's everybody's looking around. Like he said, everybody's looking around. Everybody's trying to find the best spot for them in the future. ACC schools as well. It's just the actual act of doing that. It's a lot harder than just simply putting it out there in the Twitterverse and it happening a few days later.
Well, yeah, and I understand it. Look, if I was the AD at Boston College, I would not feel that there's unification at all, because what is anybody asking me to come with them for? Nobody's called me. Nobody said, hey, let's get. Do you want to be a part of this group of 7? Because we know the group of 7 were who they were. And if you look at who it was, Virginia Tech, that's kind of a political thing in that state. So they can, whatever move they're going to make together. And UNC, NC State, again, both deciding that they want out of that conference. Florida State, who doesn't have, and Miami's a private school, but again, you can kind of navigate through some of the politics there. Clemson doesn't have, there's another ACC school in South Carolina. So there's your 7 right there, and you can see how that kind of formed together. And then everybody else is spread out a little bit and maybe doesn't have a buddy that's so close that they can partner with it and navigate their state politics. So those kind of come together. That's an easy 7 to put together, but it is not, again, it's going to be so hard to do it, but I think they do have to raise questions about, is there any way that we can enhance this?
Right, because that's what they did yesterday. They got their appetite satisfied with the ACC promising to have some more conversations about revenue sharing and things of that nature. and they seem satisfied with that, and everybody left happy. But yeah, by no means does that just sit there and say, all right, everything's hunky-dory and nothing else is possible that could disrupt this thing. It's just the things that would have to happen to make that happen for this particular lane, not for everybody else, but for this particular conference. It's just a lot of, things, a lot of, as he points out, and I think one of his responses, talk about just the money that you would have to use in the lawsuit to get out of a grant of rights at this point would be an absurd amount of money. So what are you really gaining? And I like that he also addressed that one of the parents' 7 schools, somebody he talked to, wasn't even sure they'd have a landing spot. What was I talking about at the very beginning of this? Said, are we sure even all these schools have a spot, that they know they have a spot somewhere? Apparently they don't. So again, a lot of barking and threatening, showing your teeth, to get, a little bit of a something that you wanted. And, we'll see what they do about that and how exactly they do that. The revenue sharing model that's been talked about from the postseason, certainly seems like a good fit, but is that going to keep everybody fat and happy for the next, 13 years? Probably not. So
no, well,
there's cracks, but there's no fracture right now.
I would say the cracks are the smaller schools that are looking at the next 13 years of, well, it's clear that there are people at the top who don't care what happens to me at the end of this.
Oh, dude, if we're sitting here thinking that anybody does, you're just a fool.
But,
I don't know how you're in your position that you're in.
But now you know it, and
right.
you have to sit here for more than a decade wondering, how do I get to this point? But you may not ever – it's not realistic.
I think everybody in Big 12 country realizes this, or anybody who's been through this from other conferences. But, everybody's all nice and all on one page together. And I don't want to disrupt the really, good feelings that the Big 12 Conference has as an entity right now, because it's as united as it's ever been. It's, not sitting there with a ton of top blue blood programs like it once had, but, for what they lost there, they've gained in, whatever value you want to apply to just having some calm waters. But I think we'd be lying to the audience, which we never do, to say that there wasn't some conversations going on. And, yeah, if somebody had been told, like a K-State or a Baylor or a Texas Tech, that they got a spot in one of these conferences, that they're secure and it's in the SEC or the Big Ten, guess what? Big 12 isn't sitting here like it is right now. Mm-hmm. But they all looked up and realized, all we got is each other, right? You come to that realization, all we got is each other, and we're better off together than we are separated, and that's what's formed this. But absolutely, all the ones talking about how everybody's so great now, they were all making phone calls. Mac Rose was making phone calls, I'm sure. Kirby Hocutt was making phone calls, I'm sure. Name an AD in the Big 12. They were making phone calls, and had they been told, something other than what they were told ultimately, maybe we're not covering the Big 12 anymore. We're covering whatever that broke into along with the others that are still around. But instead, it was a matter of not having legitimate landing spots, amongst other things, that, basically forced them into the situation. But it's turned out great. It's turned out well. But, yeah, absolutely, everybody's looking out for their best interest at the end of the day. And if you're not doing that as Florida State's athletic director or president or Miami's or whoever's, then, I like tradition, but I do think that being realistic, that you've got to do what's best for you and your school. That's what your job is. It's not to save Duke and North Carolina football and make sure they're on equal plane with you. It's to do what's best for FSU or whoever that is. And so that's what they're all doing. That's what they were doing. And they got a satisfactory enough answer to keep them all doing that together. But there will undoubtedly continue to be little side conversations. Just, how much we're public to any of that will be few and far between.
Yeah. And look, Florida State and Clemson are not going to let everybody forget every year that they're getting the ratings. That's going to keep coming up and keep coming up and keep coming up. Because guess what happened? It happened in the Big 12 a lot. It happened in the Big 12 a lot. You're going to keep on. And then the rest of the league is going to feel whatever way they're going to feel about something until whenever they can do something about it. But, you've got, $500 million, and it's not $500 million total. If Florida State and Clemson just left alone, they're going to have to owe $500 million per school to get out of it because of how long.
Yeah, dude, it's not on board right. Let's say it's not happening right now. It's absolutely nothing's going to happen right now. But, down the line, if things continue on the current trajectory and the money gaps and all that, yeah, absolutely. There is the they've got the twigs that they put together, but there's no match, there's no lighter, there's none of that right now, it appears. It's all just everybody looking out for their own best interest and doing so before it's too late to do so. And I think that's what everybody would do in that same situation. But, whether or not somebody ends up pouring some lighter fluid on it or not, that'll take another act of which we're not sure what that would even be at this point. And for it to be any of these schools doing that act, it would take, quite a bit on their part, which is kind of hard to believe right now that any of them would be able to deal with the lawsuits, the financial penalties and the things that would come with that. So, yeah, it's just doing what you got to do for your own best interest, as they will all continue to do moving forward, whether it's, a decision next week or it's a decision 10 years down the line.
Yeah. Kim Coulter says, Paul, good thing FSU's getting the ratings because they damn sure ain't getting the wins. They're 11 and, they were 11-3 last year,
I was
though.
thinking the same thing until last year.
I mean, they're 11-3. And look, it says something about a brand. Oklahoma gets ratings, and they didn't have a good year last year. Texas keeps getting ratings, and they've been crap for a decade. It's not about that. Like, it doesn't make sense, but it's not about that. And so when the TV deals are happening.
But it is about that when it comes to revenue sharing, if it's about wins, though.
It is now.
You gotta win.
It is now. Yes, it is now. And that's how they set it up, because they know that, they're more likely to be in that, or they believe that they are. But the bottom line is that when you're talking about conference realignment and what they're trying to do, everybody thinking about the last wave of it where Rutgers and Maryland came into the Big Ten because that was the New York and D.C. market. That's not what they're trying to do now. They're trying to create compelling television shows. So what are compelling television shows when it comes to broadcast is brand names. That's why the SEC is what it is, because you've got brand names all over it. So that's what they're trying to create. So, yeah, because they've had 5 bad years in a row, yeah, it's been bad, but during those 5 bad years, they were still drawing $3 million. So they know they have cachet, and it's that way for a lot of schools. USC was still getting ratings, and they were bad. Doesn't make sense, but that's how it is. The Cowboys get ratings in the NFL all the time, no matter how good they are.
What were UCLA's ratings? I'm not
Well,
sure.
UCLA was that
so
was kind of
it depends, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're blue blood and you got a big fan base and a lot of alums and a lot of money and tradition and history, yeah, it matters less winning and losing. It doesn't not matter at all, but it matters far less, because even if you suck, you're still going to have 5 million people for a big game tuning in to watch you, if not, more than that, given whatever school you want to throw out there. But you're right, Kim. I thought the same thing. But, yeah, it doesn't matter as much. Like when people bring up, well, TCU's been really good here lately, but like they're also very small and they, this and that. So winning matters, but it doesn't matter sometimes as much as the winning that you did in previous decades and the history that you established then. But I will maintain that the only way to feel good about your position or your lot, whoever you are, is to freaking win.
Yeah.
If you are TCU or you are Baylor or Oklahoma State or any other number of schools, the best answer to all of this, especially when you don't think that you really have a cemented landing spot that's all that stable, is just go win a bunch of freaking games and win some titles, and then you'll put yourself in the best position. Your fan base will grow. Your merchandise will grow. Your attendance will grow. Winning solves a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll get an SEC invite one day, but you'll be in a hell of a lot better position than if you were who you are and you're going 6-6 every year.
Yeah. By the way, couple of